case. Let's see what I got here. Good to have it upside down.
Sorry?
That sounds very nice. All right.
Can we just get on with it, please?
Go. Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the meeting of the Board of Selectmen for Friday, February 15th. Thank you for coming. And we don't have any Boy Scouts, but we have the Chiefs here, so I'll ask Chief Slayman and Chief Lee if they'll lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And I neglected to mention the board did not meet in executive session prior to the opening of this meeting. So, meeting being called to order, we have first our public forum. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the board? Seeing none, we can move to our consent agenda, and there are two items for action. Item 1, board minutes. The Board of Selectmen will consider approving the January 29, 2019 Board of Selectmen minutes. And 2, ambulance fund gifts. The Board of Selectmen will consider accepting an ambulance fund gift for $50 from Claire and Paul Wright in memory of Marge Wright. Would anyone like to address any of these individually, or if not, I will move for a motion to approve the consent agenda as stated.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed, that is unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Next, annual entertainment license, Marty's, 61 Main Street. The Hopkinton Board of Selectmen will consider approving an annual entertainment license application from Rachel Werrick on behalf of Marty's at 61 Main Street for outdoor public entertainment, including amplification systems for several outdoor events to be held on the grounds of 61 Main Street. Such events may include a food truck event, an annual spring fling, and an annual Oktoberfest. 100 or more patrons may be expected for some events. Now, some of you may recall we took this up at our previous selectmen's meeting, and at that point in time, there were a few pieces of the submission that the town still needed to receive. At that point, the public hearing was closed. So what that means right now is that we cannot receive any additional new information. The board has I believe the materials that are required, and so as I understand it, if I am correct, Mr. Kamalo, we may discuss amongst ourselves the item, and then I think we may ask Ms. Ware for some details in crafting the approval, but not new information beyond what the board already has. Is that correct?
That is correct. In fact, to be specific, there were a couple of issues that the board requested clarification. One was the litter control.
Correct.
The second issue was laying the foundation of the conversation between the applicant and the public safety personnel relative to public safety plans for the events that may be planned.
There
Correct.
was also discussion about the number of events and the hours for the events.
Yes.
Now, those are the kind of details that we can discuss with the applicant as we craft the approval.
Yes.
Okay. I know that I've spoken with the police department, who had a number of questions, and they feel satisfied that their concerns have been addressed. So I don't think we need a whole lot more discussion on that, other to include in the approval the understanding that each event there will be a contact made with the police to work out event-specific details beyond the general plan, and I think Ms. Werrick was planning on that from the start anyway. So, Rachel, you certainly may come up. We just can't get a whole lot of new information. We'll just discuss how you put this together.
And the litter control was submitted, reviewed by the
Correct.
DPW director, and he has no adverse comments.
Correct. So are there comments amongst the board members about this? It appears that all the boxes are checked.
So are you satisfied?
I'm satisfied because I've talked with the police and the fire, and the pieces that seem to be missing have been worked out with our public safety officials. That
you're
was my
good.
biggest concern.
Okay. And then, so if that would check, in my mind anyway, that would check off the litter, the traffic, and the public safety questions.
Correct.
That were still outstanding. The only thing that I think then would still be open, in my mind anyway, are the hours for the events, like a sort of a cutoff time anyway. I don't really care when it starts, but the
Broad.
evening end time, maybe we could talk about a little bit. And then just how many of these would we be looking at for this next year coming up?
So the cutoff, we would end at 8, because that would be dusk. You know, we can't do anything in the dark.
Is that okay with you?
That's fine with me.
And
Okay.
I know you put in a no Sunday. You sent us the confirmation of the no Sunday, so we've got
We're
that
not doing
right.
anything on Sunday.
Yeah.
And
No Sundays, and ending at 8 o'clock works for you. That works for me. I don't know about my colleagues. And then how many times a year would you want to do something?
I know we have 2 scheduled right now.
Okay?
Ideally, I'd like to have it open to that I could potentially do 6 to 8, I mean, which is still a lot. There's a lot that goes into these, and it's a lot on the store, it's a lot on me. So I can't see myself doing more than 6, 8
So-
maximum.
Would 6 be okay?
6 is perfect.
I personally am comfortable with 6. I think with 8, because you really can't do anything. Well, you
It's a
guess,
small window we have.
yeah, January, February, March are kind of out. So then it's 9 months. If you did 8, that would be kind of a lot. But I think 6 every 2 months to do something, is that okay?
That's good with me.
Okay, I'd be good with 6.
And to that point, I think at the previous hearing, there was someone that mentioned, if you did it within the summer months of July and August, that could be every weekend, which
Right.
could be a lot for the neighbors. So I think that's,
6 works for me. So 6 and 8 o'clock and no Sundays, I think is great.
I'm fine.
Works for me.
question, and I don't think it goes into the realm of getting new information, but just for the logistics of each of these things, the litter and all the rest, am I correct in assuming that since these individual ones, you're being good enough to provide the venue, but they're for individual charities, so will some of this fall on the, I would hope, on the event organizers for their charity? Like if you're doing, I don't know, Live Forever, to look after the litter and all, and the stuff. I would think that some of these requirements would be borne by the person who's the
Well,
beneficiary.
if Marty's is doing this to help somebody, we're doing this because we want to.
Yeah,
Yeah, one of our first ones, if I may, one of our first ones was a scholarship fund for the
Yeah.
Canty family. So you can't really ask the Canty family to come to police.
no, it depends on who it is. I mean, I was just
Right.
feeling
I
that.
mean, you're asking Becky Canty to come and monitor trash? I mean, that's ridiculous.
No, I'm not asking Becky Canty to come and monitor trash. I was just trying to express that the fact that you're being good enough to provide the venue, that perhaps, depending on the organization, some of the responsibility or the contacts with the police and fire, if there are problems, could go to a contact person for that organization whose event is being held. I mean, it's fine, it's just, I'm just saying, you're bearing the whole
I
load.
think we're getting
was
into,
hoping
but I think we're getting too
Yeah.
deep into the weeds when it
Yeah.
comes
So
to.
Madam
So-
Chair, if
so
I could,
if-
please.
Can
I move that the Board of Selectmen approve the annual entertainment license application as submitted by Marty's at 61 Main Street for entertainment events outdoors, not to exceed 6 times per year, not to run past 8 PM on any day that they are held, and not to be held on any Sundays in the course of the year.
Second.
Mr. Kamalo had a comment.
Suggestion. That perhaps as part of the approval, the applicant is going to be required to educate whoever is managing the event on the conditions of the permit.
Sure. That's what I
That
was
answers
getting at.
last question.
And in my motion, and that the applicant would communicate with the charity event or charity organizers, the responsibilities under the license. How's that?
Yeah.
So that's the motion.
Accepted,
That's what I was getting at.
And that's the
Thank
second in your,
accepted.
I'm sorry, so a comment if I could please to the applicant now. So are you good with this?
I'm great with it.
With the motion that's on the table? Forget everything else, the motion on the table, you're good.
Works for me.
Okay, great.
To be clear, where I was going from was trying to take a little of the responsibility off of you because you're being good enough to do this. So I think Mr. Kamalo's addition makes that clear.
It's a welcome amendment to my motion.
Mr.
Thank you.
Nasrallah?
Do we want to have a limit how early it could start? Like not before noon?
I wouldn't, you can say that. I would never start anything before noon.
What if a road race came to her and said they want to do a road race with her kind of coordinating, and she's got 6 slots,
Okay.
and one of them could be a road race, and you don't want that midday,
Sure. Okay.
Is that right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So how is that resolved?
Leave it open-ended
Leave it open-ended?
and let
Because you
common
couldn't-
sense prevail.
All right.
Careful now.
See, well, one of the other things we have to keep in mind, through the chair, I'm sorry, is that it's a license. It can always be pulled. So when we're working on all of these, we're trying to, make sure that we have control over all of it. If there's something that we don't approve of, we can always pull it, just like liquor licenses and all other licenses, you can, so.
Well, that's absolutely correct, but at the same time, you'd rather try to get things right from the start so that you don't have to do that. If there's some simple parameters that everybody can agree upon, you'd rather avoid that. So I think that's what we've been doing here, so.
Okay.
Okay, there is a motion on the table. It has been seconded. Do we need that read, or are we pretty clear what we're voting on? Elaine, can you read that?
To approve the license as submitted with the conditions that events end by 8 p.m., maximum of 6 events per year, no Sundays, and that the applicant communicate with the charity organizers the responsibilities under the license.
All right, all those in favor, please.
Aye.
Say aye. Opposed? That is unanimous. Thank you for coming back a second time. Good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys have a good weekend.
You too. Okay. The next item, banner over Main Street, I believe that has been withdrawn. Is that correct? Okay, so this item will be no action item. All right, FY '20 Comprehensive Budget and Capital Budget Hearing. The Board of Selectmen will review the budget and capital requests of the Fire Department, Police Department, Department of Public Works, Engineering Facilities Department, and Information Technology Department. So, first up, the Fire Department. Chief.
Thanks for having me. I had a couple pictures. Is it okay if I displayed a couple?
Go for it.
Thank you very much. And just to start with my budget, if I can just talk about the objectives. To deliver quality service in a safe, efficient, and effective manner, and at a reasonable cost. Second, to focus on service delivery, employee development, community engagement, and community preparedness. And then demonstrate results of improvement in delivery of effective response force. So the picture I threatened you with, let's see if I can get this together here. Most of what we're doing is it's service delivery and it's personnel, and here is one of our new paramedics that was hired, and he just finished training at the fire academy. So that makes him street ready, and I've covered for the last 2 years effective response force, and it takes us about a year to get somebody to that point, and here we were able to go out with Mr. Kamalo and a few of our staff and enjoy their graduation. So it's a big deal, and it's a long journey to get somebody street ready and then be effective in that equation. I just like to share that with you. I've talked about it in the last couple of years.
What's his name?
That is Patrick Rahel.
Nettles.
Yep. So one of the stats, we just have a couple slides of stats. I'm not going to kill you here, I promise. But just the last couple of years, I've talked about effective response force. Basically, the measures here that you're seeing, 3 data points, are the response is a request for service from the public. The middle ERF, or effective response force, that I measure is, you can see in year 1 was 1823, and year 2 is 1921, and this year was 2136. And the one I talked to you a little more about is when we're not getting an effective response force out. And I talked to a lot about that last year, that I watch it, I get concerned by it, and it's kind of a measure to see how we're doing. So that has crept up in the 3-year period that I've been drilling down. Basically what that is I look at every single request for service. I have a criteria list that shows whether we have an effective response force that goes out, and I give it a rating. So I'm trying in any way, based on input from you or best practices or feedback, to give a realistic picture of how we're doing. Any questions on that? Okay.
Let me just ask, Chief, so what would you call a non-effective response? What are the factors that would make you feel the response was not as effective as you'd like?
Sure, great point. So a medical emergency is one of our largest categories, and if we had it's to meet the standard of care that we're looking to deliver would be 2 paramedics and 2 basic life support units to do the call.
So you might find yourself a little shorthanded.
Yeah, if we were missing one of the paramedics, or we didn't get a total of 4 to respond, that would come up as a no in the rating. And I don't count mutual aid in because there's a time factor in there. So if we're not available and an Ashland ambulance came and did the service, I give that a no. It's just too far in their response time model to say we are effectively getting to the call. We're trying to add that in our equation. I've talked to you the last couple of years with 1 station and 1 response zone. It's a little challenging to have time be our enemy, but that's just kind of the rough part of it.
Okay, thanks.
Can we go back to that slide for a sec, please?
Sure.
So in 2016, we had, and maybe you're going to have something on this down the path here, I don't know. We had 2,131 responses, right? And how many employees do we have in 2016?
We have added 3 since then, so we had 24 firefighters for response.
In 16.
Yep.
So that's 88 per firefighter. And now we have 2,505 divided by how many? 27?
Last year we would have had 26, and this year we had 27.
27. Is that 2,505 for this year with the
I'm
27?
sorry, flip-flop that. It would have been 1 additional for the year before, and then we had 2 for this year. So it would have been
26.
25 in 17 and 27 in 18.
So it's 92. So it's 92. The number of responses per employee is going up. Okay.
It is, and we have some capacity. I think there's positive pieces to this data is we have capacity inside of these numbers to get, but it's the number that there isn't capacity is the one that I watch the most. And I think we'll see that through the growth curve. I talked to Mr. Kamalo a lot. There's certain times when you might get a lot more bang for your buck, where we might have 0 paramedics available to respond, and then you might have 1. When you hit 2, that's when you get the yes, and that's where you get a little more return on investment, and that's where we try to strategically place our staff. I think the reason our capacity has done so well is we've put people during the high frequency times, these impact positions, and they're available for more calls, and therefore we get a higher result. So I think that's been a positive, the way we managed the system in the last 3 years.
So
And not everybody does that.
If we didn't add the 3 firefighters between 16 and 18, divided by 24, we'd have 105 responses per employee, which is a 20% almost differential there.
Yes.
We stayed flat, so that would, I can see how that would strain the heck out of us. Okay, thank you.
Yep, and it's not I'm trying to find the perfect science. Everybody wants me to be able to say just one. I'm able to, with the data, the next slide just gives you another little snapshot of it, and hopefully it'll come up on the screen. Sleeping, there we go. So there's about 27 years of history in there and 3 years of projection right at the end that I try to look out for you. You can see the overlay of requests for service and firefighters, which was the math you were just doing. And you can see that our requests for service has gone up dramatically since 2014, and we have been trying to match up somehow. And then, just so, you know, this is okay view, it kind of shows our practice, but this, I'm trying to drill in deeper and show you this effective response force as kind of a better data point of saying whether we're really getting the results that we want. And then, you know, there's even further drilling that you can do and say, okay, is there a positive medical result? Did we put the fire out earlier? And that's stuff that Mr. Kamalo and I kind of look at and say, where can we find this? How can we have the right data points or show that in an analysis somehow for you?
So the numbers on the left there on the x-axis, that's
Was it up there? All right.
That's showing firefighters in the 35-person range for 20, oh, that's 2025, I see, gotcha.
Yeah, I did a couple of accesses to overlay them.
Okay, but we're still close to showing, oh, it's 2020, that's, all right, got it.
And in projection here, I'm just, again, it's not what we should do necessarily, but I'm just trying to show you a look outward. If we follow similar patterns, basically adding 1 firefighter per 500 people, and that tended to lay out every year at this current rate of growth, that just kind of gives us a look out. Now, the danger of that is that in that same model, we're actually falling behind a little bit in effective response force, so I'm worried that that's not, what I've just shown you there might not be enough. But there's more ways we can look at it.
To the chair. So between like 2008 and 2015, there were some dips.
Don't worry about it, okay.
There were some dips between 2008 and 2015. So, you know, and you know, then we look at the, like the Legacy Farms development that has, and they have full fire suppression, don't they, in those?
They do.
So, and then, so that's what, so when you were showing the slide with the firefighters, now those are firefighters, or those EMTs also? Because that's what you were saying before, that most of the calls are EMT as opposed to firefighters.
I would, yes.
Oh, okay. 'Cause that's
Yep,
one.
we're hiring them as paramedics, we train them as firefighters, they cross-staff the equipment.
Because no, I'm just wondering if the, you know, you know, you're projecting that slope, but
Yes.
in actuality, there could be a dip that we don't.
The economy could change tomorrow, and different things can happen. So I'm just trying to give you a snapshot based on what we're currently having, and I call the planning board, I watch any type of meetings to try to say, what do we think the future will be? So nobody's calling for a level off right this second, and so I try not to look out too far, but I haven't had anybody conflict the numbers yet.
But you see this as a we're on pace to do all right, because you saw the adding the 2 firefighters 2 years ago, and then 2 more last year, and.
Yep, so we did 1, we added 1 2 years ago, and we added 2 last year. We fell behind in the effective response force number, and that was like one of my concerns I talked to you about last year. So I wouldn't want to, so you were up to 365 calls that we didn't provide an effective response force. That's probably my number 1 concern, and I think I said that to you in the meeting last year. That worries me the most.
Because we also cover 495 in the Mass Pike, don't we?
Yep.
Now, was there an uptick in any of those? Because that gives a longer response time and everything else and takes up a lot more time.
Yep, I don't have that data point with me right this second, so I apologize. It's on our risk list when we analyze it. As they improve it, they are limiting the access to the highway even more, which can add to these response times.
Yeah, 'cause
Hopefully, they say they're making it safer, so hopefully that number will work its way down, but I don't know that yet.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to point out that,
Yep.
that it's not just the growth of our town, but also it's the number of vehicles on the adjacent roads that we have to cover also too.
It is, yep, it's a part of our response zone. Yep.
Through the chair. Excuse me. You had mentioned earlier that majority of the responses are medical emergencies.
It's about 65% to 35% right now.
And is it like weighted evenly amongst the population, or is it like, we have an assisted living facility in town, we have some 55-plus dwellings, is that weighted heavier, more responses there? And with the expansion of Golden Pond, is that something that we need to kind of factor in as additional responses that would be required?
Yeah, I track all of those individually. There has been an uptick in per room service. Having said that, there's been an uptick for the entire community also.
So these graphs that you're showing us takes all that into account? The
Yes.
projected growth?
Yeah, I didn't break those out. They do, those individual units that you spoke to have gone up at a higher level. They do impact us. Between them all that you kind of alluded to, there's probably 400 requests for service uptick in the 3-year period. But the community also had an uptick in itself, so it tends to be spread out some. We watch the individual units and try to, just in preparedness, any type of risk management, we might be able to do a training with them. That's stuff we kind of look at to see if we can impact the numbers. I'd like to report to you that we've held the numbers down somewhat based on that stuff, but it's anecdotal at this point.
Sure. 3 years away.
And then just the final slide, and you have the budget material as these are the big movers on the right. There's 3 new firefighters that's in the proposal. There's a contractual, they settled a contract last year, a 3-year contract that showed into this budget. There was a big move in a fuel transfer. There's some state requirements for some of the equipment we have in the ambulance that we have to do service agreements that we have no choice in, so that was an increase. Some fleet maintenance is probably one of my biggest costs that I have in my programs, and it's the one that has challenged me the most, so I had bumped that up a little bit. Just some of the uniforms that go with the teams that we do and keep us professionally looking, and some of the new hires, I've ticked that up a little bit. And then emergency management, just a part of our communications program. I've seen a lot of the stuff that we're responsible for, and there is a need to do some maintenance and have some piece together, plus we do some training together in our emergency management team, and I'm just trying to open up something to begin to account for that. Currently, I either pick it up or the police chief picks it up in between our budgets, and if we really need to break it out and do some maintenance on specific emergency management equipment, so. That's it.
Just one more question to the chair. Are there major things that could help any of this response time other than FTEs that you left off your budget that you think you may have needed in order to help your situation? So
I try to, internally, in what we do is, a perfect example is somebody asks all the time, why does a fire engine go with an ambulance to a medical emergency type of a thing? We literally have done some tips of our fire engine is actually an ambulance in rating. It has paramedic equipment. If it has a paramedic on it, they have the ability to break off and handle another call. That's kind of a choice we do, and would potentially benefit us on getting an effective response force to another call earlier. So the ladder truck that we bought is a Quint. It has, it allowed us to downsize one pump, and it has 2 capabilities in it. Those are kind of internal examples that I can think of. A lot of it is about the main calls that we have, it's medical emergencies, and having the paramedic availability to do that. We transitioned into that 10 years ago. We were a 1 ambulance town, we're trying to become a 2 ambulance town, and it takes staff. I don't know of another way to really get around that.
So to that point, and I know I asked you this one time before, Chief, so can you explain the difference between if you need to take an ambulance plus a truck, the difference between taking one of the standard fire trucks on all these calls versus taking the ladder truck? Because the ladder truck is a huge item. It's going to be a huge item to replace. It's the last item you want to put unnecessary miles on. So I understand there are things that a fire engine brings along that the ambulance doesn't provide, but can you just explain again why we can't take one of the lesser vehicles and avoid putting more miles on that very precious ladder truck?
So it has to do with, you try to look at all the factors you just mentioned. So the number of runs that piece of equipment can handle.
Yeah.
The cost to operate it. Do you have, realize right now we have one company. We have 4 or 5 people at the fire station. So if they're in a car and this other call comes in, they have to go try to get whatever piece of equipment there is to go. So you're kind of weighing that out with a larger piece of equipment that has capability. The driver goal for us is to be able to have the equipment. We rate efficiency as the person, the right equipment, the right training, and they get there in a timely manner. So if they're in a car and it's not equipped to extinguish a fire, or it doesn't have the paramedic equipment in it, or if they have to go back to the fire station, they're not traveling by, you start to lose efficiencies, and you just check it with the cost and the frequency and make that decision. It's so many places that consider themselves progressive have made the decision, you design the ladder truck as big as it is to be more multi-purpose. You design the engine as big as it is to be more multi-purpose. So constantly the worries that you have, I have to look at them and see whether it's how we're doing in that category. We very rarely have worn equipment out. We are getting very busy now, so that is going to be more of a factor. With the additional personnel, we'll have an option where maybe we keep a company in service in a station while the other equipment is out, so we're not without coverage. We never had that luxury before. It's the number of people to be effective to go to the medical, you would have left one or none back at the station, and they're just not effective. So that's why we try to make it so we have a unit that has capability and can move. I hope I'm not getting long-winded on you. I'm passionate about this, so.
Yeah, you guys do a fantastic job, and I'm not here micromanaging your force. We don't just have the ladder truck, we have other vehicles as well.
Yep.
So it's still sounding to me like the ladder truck's going out on every call, and all those other vehicles are sitting there unused okay, whatever. I don't quite understand still why the other vehicles can't get used to provide those support services, why those are sitting and the ladder truck's the one that's doing all the work now.
Yeah, the ladder truck doesn't currently do the work. In the future, it probably would, and that'll be dialogue I have. It doesn't do the work right now. It sits mostly. It would go to alarm calls. It went to a medical today just because there were 2 medicals, and it was the second piece of equipment, and we had the staffing, but that's rare.
So I'm misunderstanding you then. When you go out in these medical calls, you bring the ambulance and you bring another fire vehicle. More often than not, you're bringing one of the standard trucks?
It's engine 4, and it's also, it can do everything. It's a paramedic engine, it's a fire engine, it's not a ladder. That's the one thing it doesn't have. Some people have multi-purposed all the way to that the ladder truck is the piece of equipment that can do everything. So that's something we'll study for you.
Okay, I was under the impression that the ladder truck was the one that was going to
Nope.
all the calls. That's where my question was coming from. Okay. Other questions? on the budget?
I think the numbers, I did a little calculation here, the numbers of additional firefighters with the projected numbers of calls maintains basically the same ratios, so it seems to be logical. It's just, a clear example of our town is growing, our budget is growing as a result, but we're not growing in excess, nor are we holding back too much either. So today we can afford, use that term loosely, what we're doing for growth. Someday this will become more of a problem. When the new growth slows down or stops and the budget keeps going, that's when we're gonna have the problem.
Sure.
I don't see that for the next few years with what's going on in town growth-wise, but I'm good for right now.
Mr. Kamalo?
Yeah, in fact, Mr. Hare, in my conversations with the chief, the key driver behind the town manager's support for the 3 firemen was exactly that, namely that the 3 firemen simply keep us on pace. They account for the gap that we have experienced over the past years. And at the same time, if we fund them in FY20, we then don't lag behind that much. That was the key driver as to why the town manager decided to support the 3 firemen.
And presumably, to your point, if the growth were to level off, the demand for services should maintain at that level, we would hope.
Should.
But.
You guys will cross that bridge when you get
But
there.
yeah, but contractual obligations still go up.
Sure.
And those are always the biggest drivers, so that's one of the reasons why new growth is necessary in the town, because you have to keep up with itself.
But you wouldn't be hiring more firefighters if you didn't have increase in population and increase in calls. Your services leveled off.
No, but the contractual obligations still go up, so that the budgets will still keep, to Brian's point, the budgets are gonna go up, whether or not the growth in the town disappears, the budgets still go up.
On the existing
And then there's no
employees.
more excess money coming in that we've been lucky to have the last few years.
Okay, so,
Capital?
To speak to capital?
Yeah, capital, please.
Oh, sure.
sure, let's go with
So
capital.
capital, we have, car one is the replacement piece that I have. It's a Chevy Tahoe 2011. It has 64,000 miles on it. It's my car.
I got 196.
So that is, again, I kind of say this about all my capital equipment. We've put together a 10-year capital plan. We try to balance out some of the cost and pick what we think is a best practice to keep a car in service. The luxury and why I defend it, not going 186,000 miles, is just this public safety piece. I work it hard, and we're trying to not have it be out of service. You can always get another year out of something when we're doing it, but we've always tried to stay away from that and come up with a spending plan. So I'm always open to listen, but the priority for me has been personnel, but that's where this piece of capital falls in. The second piece is the fire station study. We've had a lot of work on that, especially in the last few weeks. We are very, very, very close. How's that, Mr. Kamalo, to reporting out to you on the fire station study and the need for further study. So I expect to have more dialogue with you in the next few weeks and a report in your hands. So I don't want to overstate it until I deliver it, because I've had people looking at me waiting for a report. So that's where that is, if somebody has a question. And then finally, we had the ladder truck is coming due. I put it in front of you this year to take a look. It's an expensive piece of equipment. It's something that I got used, and it's treated us well so far. And but unlike believe it or not, the biggest challenge with this is some of its designs and technology improvements for safety that they have over the years. So again, kind of to your point with some of your questions, it's not worn out yet, but there's some real laggers, being a 1999. I always worry about the braking. It's had some braking issues. The bottom of the truck design, It's not like the newer designs which account for grade better, so this will bottom out some on some hills, which has been a little bit of an issue for us. And making the investment for this piece of equipment that we may analyze to do more services for us is why I put it kind of on the list, so you can see it. It's expensive, it could go another year, but I wanted to put it in front of you to say, it's a lot to push out too, so.
Yeah, I
Open for
noticed on your
questions.
comments, you said it has a few years of life left in it.
Yep.
And it is a big-ticket item, so.
Yep.
Mr. Kamala, are we being asked to take positions on these, or at this point, just to have an overview and questions?
Both. If at any point the board feels that it has enough information and can take a position, I think it's important that that be done.
Otherwise, will we revisit all these items closer to town meeting and take a definite position?
We would rather revisit less of them
Less of them.
in the future. Yeah.
I'll stop talking there, I get going, and Mr. Kamala will kick me.
I guess just because of the amount of dollars we're talking about, and, you know, if it's got a little more time, I'm a little hesitant to go in for $1 million plus piece of equipment if we can get a little more out of it, but that's just me.
Chief, is the 1.2 number that we have there, is that net of a trade?
Oh, I should have that right off the top of my head. It is net the trade. I don't anticipate a lot in the trade. It could be 60 to 100. I'd love to tell you it was going to be way more than that because it's a beautiful truck, but the trade market has been rough lately, and I found that out with the ambulance. So it is including that.
So I guess, building on that, if it's a $60,000 and we think that the value to that truck is probably worth more than $60,000, would it be advantageous to the town to maybe keep that as a second truck? I don't know if we have the room for that, but, you know, rather than throw away an asset and lose a, you know, a couple $100,000 in a trade, would we have the ability to maybe have a second ladder truck?
It's a great question. You would want to do that. Currently, we don't have the room, but we're talking about another fire station, and there is a time lag potentially on when this becomes in service. So we could make that assessment, yeah. If it's a $60,000 cash-in, I think we should look at that hard.
Yeah. I know that
Somebody else in the community might, you know, one of the neighboring communities might have an interest, and who knows?
Yep, okay.
Tower truck.
On the chief's car, with 65,000, how many miles do you think you'd put on that in another year? And do you have an idea how many vehicles would be coming up for replacement? I know, you know, they all come up year upon year, so if we put that off, we're gonna be looking at, you know, 2 or 3 instead of 1. What would be coming up next year? And how many miles difference would a year make to wait on that? 65 doesn't sound that high somehow.
No, I'm hoping you have like the 10-year capital plan, and that's a part of what we looked at. Adding the second fire station into the capital plan, because there is a potential, caused us to do a little bit of this jockeying around. Otherwise, you have the potential 5 years from now, really looking at some big numbers all in one pile. So you can start to push out any of these items, but I think you'd have a problem there, and all of them are what their designed replacement would be. So it's...
So 8 years, 65,000 is pretty much what your plan is for a vehicle?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. The chief's car doesn't tend to get as many miles as, say, a fire inspector, so that there might be some range there, but that would be normal.
What do you put on it in a year, usually? Do you know roughly?
It may be I'd say probably the same as Chief Clark, and we're the 2 drivers, so I'd say the math, I'd say 8,000 a year.
By 3, yeah.
So I don't know, I don't think we can look at the chief's car any different than we look at a police cruiser or these other emergency response vehicles. If his goes down, or the police cruisers go down, or these other emergency things go down, it's not like you can run over to Hertz and rent one for a couple of days. So it needs to be very, you know, reliable, and it needs to be ready to go at a moment's notice. So I'm not a big fan of pushing things like this out, but you know, it's the want versus need thing. We'll figure it out once we look at it a little closer.
In fact, if I may, through the chair, early this year, I had a very unpleasant experience one morning driving into work. I saw our ambulance being pulled onto the bed of a tow truck. And my call to the acting chief, I think it was the deputy chief then, confirmed that the ambulance broke down during a transport. We can't have that.
Just worth asking the question so people know we're watching the dollars.
Yep, I hear you. They get a lot of idle time, which is kind of the hidden piece to them, and it's not healthy for them to sit there and idle for 4 or 5 hours at a fire.
Yep.
And it's like a hidden
Yeah.
bad thing for them.
Yeah. Minus 15 degrees and you're idling for 4 hours with water in a pump and stuff tends to expand.
Okay, are there other members on, questions on the part of the board? Good for now? Everybody? Okay. Then I guess that does it for the time being with the chief.
Thank you,
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you very much. And next up would be Chief Lee. Please. Afternoon.
I have an hour and a half long PowerPoint presentation, but I can hold off on that if you'd like.
So moved.
Go for that.
Steve, always making this.
We'll skip the PowerPoint, chief.
I can also give you a quick summary on the police department and where we are, but or I can just get right down to brass tacks and give the impact of the budget if you'd like. Okay. So basically, out of the, sounds high, 12.7 increase to the budget, 2.85 of those represents the addition of an education stipend. And I'll explain that a little further, how that education stipend does have some positive results. 4.33 represents an additional position, and this is the main ask in our budget, other than contractual obligations. It's a position for a detective sergeant's position. We've increased, and we're in the process of promoting 2 sergeants, one from the position we picked up last year that will buttress the patrol force. We have a lot of young officers out there, and the goal is to have as much supervision as possible. The new position that I'm asking for now is to head the detective division, but most importantly, it is to run the prosecution division for the police department, which has a huge amount of responsibility. It's currently being done by Detective Burchard at this time. He does a great job, but usually in those positions, you want a bit of rank so you can oversee, respond to officers if they're not doing their cases in a timely manner, and have proper paperwork that could lead to liability for the towns or loss of important prosecutions. So we're asking for this position, which will also be able to, on occasion, buttress the patrol force. Being a sergeant, it'll be a Monday through Friday position, but also have the ability to work overtime if another sergeant is not available. 4.89 represents contractual increases of 9 full-time officers, just basically moving up through their steps. There was a 2.9 increase in the admin salaries, which represents merit raises. There is a 8.9 increase in overtime, which represents the increase of average overtime rate due to contractual obligations. This will also absorb the anticipated cost of overtime for the K-9 officer. Since the personal budget now assumes the cost of the EMT stipend, the expense will be reduced and will eventually go away. As time will put employees through attrition, I believe it's about 9 or 10 officers right now, but eventually the newer officers on the job will not have that EMT stipend. And as I said before, as they retire, that number will go down in the future. This is also true for the Quinn bill. The educational costs for senior officers that had the Quinn bill in the past range from 10 to 25% of their salary. The new educational program that was negotiated now is at $6,000 for a bachelor's and $10,000 for a master's annually. We have requested $6,000 for the expense of the K-9. Although we do have a grant for the K-9, it will expire over time, and this year there are other, and as we move forward, we are looking for gifts and things that, donations from the public, but we just want to make sure that we have that cushion for this year, for the next fiscal year, in case of any type of unknown medical situations, and assure us that we can maintain the program properly. There's been also a additional request for $12,000 for additional expenses associated with the increase of maintenance, as we now have a even fleet. Over the past several years, we've seen that we've had to do several more repairs to keep the fleet up. Hopefully in the future, if we continue back on what we used to have a schedule and keep that schedule up of replacing cruisers with a certain amount of mileage, we can avoid a lot of those costs. I'm sure you're aware the vehicles are now no longer a capital item, but they have been added to the operating budget.
Mr. Hurt?
Get some high-level numbers from that, and thank you for all the detail there. So your budget this year is X dollars? What is the X dollars this year?
The police budget this year is $2,654,417. Proposed for 20 is, oh sorry, the number I gave was for 20, proposed for 20. And this year, Brian, is $2,403,658.
So going up
Had me there for a
200.
second, then you lost me there.
Going up 200,000.
Going up by 250,000.
Going up by 250,000, which represents about a 9% increase. Is that
Yeah,
true?
exactly. That's in personnel. And then in expenses, it's 311,540 in 20 recommended. This year in 19 was 188,000. It's going up by 123,000.
Okay, so then, and how many people are we adding?
One.
What position?
Okay,
And then promoting 3?
The promotions, I just,
Deputy, detective sergeant and 2 regular sergeants?
the deputy chief's position is actually not figured in at this point.
Okay.
To the budget until it's rectified and we get the position squared away.
Okay.
so with this change in budget, which is percentage-wise significant, but like others, we've got this growth thing going on here, and with adding one additional person, and then sort of restructuring a few little things here and there, and the deputy chief and so on, are you comfortable that your budget is staffed for 20s size town?
Absolutely. As you're all aware, we do have a situation with the replacement of, eventually of some offices. And once we maintain that goal, we'll be adequately staffed. Of course, one of my goals is to begin the process of a strategic plan, and we'll work together with the town on the population growth, continue to look into our call volume and status, and see where we are. But right now, all indications show us this year, the need is more for instead of adding to the patrol force, is to add to the department as a whole as it grows, and we are prepared for that future growth.
Okay.
Do you have a question? You good?
Yeah, so, so is the increase of 123,000 because you're putting the cars now into your own budget and all that?
Yes, the total cost for the police cruisers is $135,634.
No drone? No drone yet? Falling behind.
He said he's taking gifts.
Progressive, we're supposed to be progressive here.
He said he's accepting gifts. I know someone that lives up in the DeCarlo area that might donate a drone.
Drone fund, dog fund,
I'll check with your cousin.
Yeah, check with my cousin.
Good? Everybody good? All right, so we move on to capital then.
At this time, I'm only involved with one capital project, which is with IT, along with the fire chief for a new CAD system. I don't know if you wanted to do that now.
What about,
No, IT will cover.
what about your
Yeah.
jail cell floor repair?
Yeah.
That is along with facilities. Facilities is, but that is something that is truly needed, and Dave and I can explain
So it's in the
that together.
facilities budget for his building.
Okay.
So Dave will speak to that eloquently.
Well, you've also got, there's also message reader boards that's under police, and then there's also a item down here for, what was it, second floor renovation?
Looks like there's no action on that.
Oh, those are no action, okay. All right,
So that's something that, will be looked at in the future, and as far as the reader boards, we might be looking at some other options to make those purchases.
Okay.
Chief, as you're building your budget and thinking through the personnel situations and, the deputy chief aside, because we did that, but some of the other moves that you're making, are you talking to the union folks at the same time and having them participate in that
Absolutely.
discovery process?
Anything we do at the police department, I've always, strive for participatory management, and that's getting everyone involved in the police department as much as possible.
I understand.
Obviously, decisions have to be made at the top, but for example, we're going through the accreditation process, and Lieutenant Porter has a setup for a mock inspection coming in March, which is the turning point, and certification is right around the corner, and then accreditation. So, but the biggest thing is the implementation of all the policies, and we sat down with the union and went through every policy, and we're happy to say that we took their feedback and had minimal disagreements, because they are CALIA and federal standards, and the officers and the union, they want what's best for the police department as a whole to be the most professional. But as far as any positions like that, I certainly sat down with the union and gone over that. And to them, it's an extra sergeant spot. It's an extra chance for someone to get a promotion in the future, and shouldn't have had their resume, but make us more professional.
Okay.
And eventually, what I would like with every officer is to have the goal of moving up into the ranks and eventually striving for my position.
Not too soon.
I promise.
Okay, so there are really no specific capital items that we'll ask questions of you on. We'll stick to IT and facilities when they come up on those two things.
Okay.
We're good?
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you, Chief. All right, so DPW, Mr. Westerling. Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
And if we are all putting our names out there for accepting gifts, the DPW will gladly take some gifts too, if anyone has any. But, having said that, I'm happy to hit the highlights of our highway, water, sewer, and capital budgets. And if you have any specific questions, I'm happy to answer those. If we look at the highway budget, we've got the standard contractual increases and our obligations to our union. We've also got some increases in the trash and recyclables collection and disposal. We are putting forward the engineer, the consultant engineer's recommendation of investing $1.2 million in our pavement management plan. Last year, we invested $1.1 million, and as predicted by the engineer, our pavement condition index, we had a minor drop from 75.5 to 73.6. However, we are still overall in good condition. So we're asking for an additional $100,000 this year over last year to have a total investment of $1.2 million. So that's made up of $650,000 from state aid, Chapter 90 funds, and $550,000 from the general budget. One of the other things that is impacting us this year and moving forward is that the state has just enacted a new law effective February 1st, which requires basically OSHA regulations to cover all municipal employees. That's DPW, police, fire, school, facilities. So there are some increases in our expenditure budget that cover things like a trench box for when we're digging graves at the cemetery. Currently, we don't use one, but now the law is required. And in the long run, these all help keep our employees safe and the residents that are safe working around our work zones. So as we go through, there are nominal increases along the way. One of the other ones that we are increasing is our tree warden budget. The tree removal budget was previously at $25,000. We are increasing that up to $50,000 to help manage the trees that we have in town and some of the complaints about tree removal. We could spend a lot more than that, but this year we benefited from Eversource in their work taking down roughly $250,000 worth of trees to clear up their lines. Happy to answer any specifics that you might want to ask about the highway budget.
What's a fair rating score for the roads?
Let's see if that's in the report.
Is that like 65 or something?
So I apologize, I don't have that here. I'm happy to provide that for you, though.
So there's excellent roads recorded by somebody or measured by somebody. There's good roads, which we fall into a good category. I assume there's fair roads, and then there's poor roads or something like, kind of in that range, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And through the
As somebody
chair,
that moves around the state pretty much every day, as I did today, as you can tell by my attire on just a couple job sites, there are towns with good roads, and there are towns you cross the line, and they are bad roads, or poor roads, whatever they call them. I don't know if we need to be excellent in roads, because I'm not sure if the ROI is the same as for some other things that your department does and others do. But I don't think we want to have poor roads either. So just a little food for thought, and there's a little bit of maybe some wiggle room in that number. I don't know.
through the chair, a number of years ago, when I started here 8 years ago, as of yesterday, thank you very much. Appreciate your continued support. We had a PCI that was lower than it is today, and we were investing $800,000 per year. We increased that to $1 million per year, and we did that for several consecutive years. Last year, we were able to increase it to $1.1 million, and our PCI, our pavement condition index, went from somewhere in the upper 60s to 75.5 last year. So we did a great job with our investment. You can't put in as much work on the roads every year because the cost of fuel goes up, the cost of bituminous concrete, everything goes up. But we were able to, 75 to 73.6 is a nominal. I don't think you would see that driving the roads. You wouldn't say, geez, what happened to our roads this year? But we're looking to stay ahead of the curve and keep that pavement condition index high. And also the other thing to worry about or to watch is our backlog. And the backlog is equal to, if we took all the work that we had to do on the roads and did them tomorrow, what's that total value? Right now, our backlog is roughly $10 million. If we increase the investment in our roads to the $1.2 million that we're asking for, even then, our PCI remains roughly the same, but the backlog goes up to $12 million. So we're not putting in as much as we should. That number is $1.5 million, but the 1.2 helps to keep our pavement condition index stable.
If I may.
Mr. Kamala, please.
Mr. Hare's question. For reference, excellent condition is 88 to 100 PCI. Good condition is 68 to 87. Fair condition is 47 to 67. Poor condition is 21 to 46. And failed condition is 0 to 20.
Okay, thank you.
As you drop into that lower pavement condition index, more of your roads need the structural improvement, as opposed to today, where we're in a preventative maintenance overall. So your roads start to drop into a structural improvement area, which is potholes, ruts, all needing full depth reconstruction.
Other questions on the part of the board?
I'm good. Are we in capital also right now?
All right, well, hearing none, then let's move on to capital.
I'm sorry, real quick, were there any personnel additions?
Not in the highway department. I haven't done water and sewer yet. The operating budgets, there is one in the water budget, but if you want to talk capital, your pleasure. That was just the highway budget. I also have water and sewer.
Okay. So just we do water and sewer and then we move to capital.
Okay, so let's do all that together. Why don't you do the water part?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Through the chair, our water budget, we are looking at a 5.9% increase. There are contractual obligations there, and we are also requesting one full-time employee for the Water Enterprise Fund. That has a staff of 5 employees, which hasn't changed over the past 10 years. Over the past 10 years, the number of meters has increased 24%. That's over the past 10 years. If you look at the more focused last 5 years, the number of customers has gone up 40%. And you can see that when we look at Legacy Farms, when you look at the Muse, when you look at some of the other developments that we've seen. So we've had a 40% increase in the number of meters or customers without an increase in the number of full-time employees. So what that means for us is that it becomes more difficult for us to keep up with the routine maintenance things like exercising our water gates, like painting our hydrants, like staying up with the 10% meter replacement. So we're looking for an increase of 1 full-time employee in the water enterprise.
And if I may on that point, sorry, John, I'm actually involved in a conversation with John, looking into whether I should be coming before the board to ask if we can actually make this higher in FY19. The reason being, the work is there, it needs to be done, and most fortunately for the town, the income from Legacy Farms relative to water connections is now coming to the town. So we have the funds to implement this. Well, in the final stages of our conversation, again, the idea here being I may come to the board and ask that we make this higher in FY19.
Through the chair, thank you very much, Norman. Don't apologize for adding any beneficial information, please.
Okay.
But especially on his anniversary that we're not celebrating.
However, as Norman mentioned, for illustrative purposes, we have had to pay back the developer of Legacy Farms for his portion of the water that he's earning from the Alprilla Farms wells that he constructed, 2 of the wells. So we have paid that back, and now the income from the new permits that are coming in, the town enjoys the benefit of receiving that income as opposed to it going back to the developer. So every new meter that comes online is over $4,000 towards our revenue stream.
Mr. Contino?
So how are we doing with the meter replacement?
We are working diligently on that. I can have numbers for you. But again, it's 10% is an ambitious goal when you have more than 3,500 meters in town. That's 1 a day. So we are doing the best we can with keeping up with that. But again, as Norman stated, the work is there, the need is there now, so that's why we would welcome having that person brought on in FY19 if possible.
No, that would be, not that, I don't want to get into splitting hairs also, that would be a task that this person may be doing.
Absolutely.
Because that's one of the things that begins to start to pay for itself when we find faulty meters, and then it also stops with our water loss and brings that number up so that the state allows us to pull more water out of the ground.
Excellent points.
What's the lifespan on those meters? How often do they need to be replaced?
The older ones, they were recommending replacing them every 10 years, and that's our goal, is to replace them every 10 years. The newer ones read much more efficiently, and they last much longer because it's a different system inside. It's no longer a spinning disc. They work off of more of an electronic structure, so they're able to be more accurate and last longer and be more efficient.
Any more questions? Now are we ready to move on to capital?
Sewer?
Happy? And sewer, yep, sewer, forgot sewer, I thought you were doing water and sewer together, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, we have a nominal increase in sewer. It's 2%, and that is primarily covering increases contractual obligations to the employees. There's also a nominal increase in the amount that we are paying for the operation and maintenance of the Fruit Street wastewater treatment facility. As that facility is aging, we are seeing the need to replace parts, and those parts are becoming more expensive as we go through its aging process.
And again, if I may, as I reported to the board when I presented the FY20 budget, both water and sewer funding sources anticipate rate increases.
Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, if we could explore that a little bit, and we don't get a brain cramp and a major headache this fall sometime when we sit down and do these rates for those water and sewer enterprise funds. These are separate businesses within the business.
Yes.
These are businesses that operate off of the revenue that comes in from the users, meaning if you're on town water, you're paying town water prices to build a fund to operate the town water system. If you're on town sewer, same thing. And then we have these hearings or whatever it is we have with the consulting group later in the year. But you just mentioned 2% for sewer. So are we going to have a discussion about a 2% rate increase when we get to the sewer rate increases later this year? Or are we going to have a conversation about a 10% rate increase and have all of our brains explode? Remember we had that happen a couple years ago. It was so much fun. I've forgotten about it. But, yeah, some of us haven't. I guess I want to make sure we're going to be in line between what we're talking about today and what we're talking about when we actually go to set the revenue stream for these two enterprise funds.
Yeah.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Yes, you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Be quiet there, he says to me.
It's, yeah.
So,
I don't believe, oh, go ahead.
through the chair, Norman was kind enough to bring to my attention, what I was talking about was the personnel services and expenses side is going up 2%. However, if you look at the overall budget for sewer enterprises, it is, what do you have for a number? Let me make sure I have the right one,
Okay,
please.
okay.
Failing the fund right now, isn't it?
I'll tell you in 1 second.
So Mr. Westerling's been here for 8 years. At what point is an employee vested? Is it 10?
In the public sector?
Yeah, it starts at
10
10.
minutes.
No, it starts at 10 years. Yeah.
Just wanted you to think about that before you made your capital requests.
I'll come back to that number, sorry, John. I'm going through the budgets. Yes.
Through the chair, with regard to what we're going to be looking at for rate increases, the vote that was taken at the special town meeting the other night to allow Lycan to open its doors will go a long way towards helping us in the long run. But when we saw the departure of Lonza and also water saving and efficiency measures that Dell EMC has put into place, we saw a $60,000 drop in our revenue. It was not expected. So that's a big hit to us. So when I'm talking about the expenses going up 2%, that's just on the expense side. It's expenses if the revenue, I know that I'm preaching to the choir, but if revenues don't match expenses and the revenues drop, then you're looking at what the potential increase is. So that was a big blow for us and a hit to the revenue stream. And I know that Lons has been gone. They had been using water up until last year, so they must have still had some operations going on in there. But those two alone in addition to the other 8 largest commercial or non-residential users that we have. It was a big blow to the revenue stream.
My recollections from the rate increase discussion last year, I think we may have raised it like 5% or so, but the projections that Abrams Group put forth with the decline in revenues and the decline in retained earnings was there was not a healthy fund. We had quite a discussion here as to how much we could comfortably raise it. I know some of us were in favor, Mr. Nazrul of I, of biting the bullet and raising a little more because the long-term projections are kind of grim for the sewer enterprise, I recall.
But just the year before, we had a surplus, and that's why I was concerned with the numbers that the Abrams Group had given us, because remember the year before, that's when I was arguing that we should reduce the rates, because we had like $1.2 million in the water budget, and all of a sudden it seemed to evaporate, and then we had to panic. So that's why, to Mr. Hurst's point, we want to make sure that we're setting up this business within the business well, because one of the hardest things is, we're always talking about conservation and everything else, and when people are conserving, we're not, the town is not making any money. So, which way do we go? To be a good citizen, do you use up enough water so that the town, the taxes don't go up, or are you a good citizen by conserving? So it's a tough thing when our commodity is water and our commodity is sewer.
My recollection of the sewer was there was a strong element of kicking the can down the road between reduced usage and projections. So anyway.
Through the chair?
Yes, Mr. Nazrul, please.
I realize that these are 2 separate funds, the water and the sewer funds. But when we have the conservation on the water end, obviously there's a hit on the sewer end, but is there a positive on the water side?
Through the chair, that is a reduction in the amount of water that we're selling.
Okay.
So if people are conserving, which we applaud because it's good for the environment, it's good for our natural resources and our aquifers, especially at times during drought or periods of low rain, that doesn't help the business side because the revenues are down.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
We had a very rainy summer, so we didn't sell much water at all.
Correct.
Yeah.
And not everybody's on public sewer either.
So we could use a couple new big businesses up on South Street, is what you're saying?
That would help the sewer enterprise fund and its revenue stream to balance revenues and expenses, yes.
Flush more.
I can see the bumper sticker now.
Oh, my goodness.
All right. Is the board happy right now on the overview of these budgets? Can we move to capital? Any more questions?
I'm good.
Okay. All right, let's move on to capital. Let's see, replace DPW truck, 2 of them.
Through the chair, we have 2 in the highway department. The first one is a replacement of a 13-year-old F-550 dump truck that has 95,000 miles on it, and it's received $20,000 in repairs. It's used on a daily basis, primarily in the cemeteries, preparing grave sites, and it's an integral part of our snow removal operations. And this is one of the trucks, if you'll recall, 4 years ago, we replaced the dump body on it to extend out the life of it, and we got another 4 years out of it. So we invested $11,000 in a dump body then, which gave us another 3 years of life. The dump body is in decent condition, but now it's the mechanics and the actual truck itself.
Aluminum dump body?
Through the chair, at that time, it was non-aluminum dump body.
Am I reading this through the chair?
Mr. Nusrell?
Am I reading this correctly, that it was $27,000 worth of repairs?
That's correct. Over the life of the truck, it's received $27,000 worth of repairs.
That's over the life of the truck.
Correct.
Okay.
To the chair, so are you getting the vehicle that we cut out of the budget last year? I mean, we cut a front end loader or something.
Backhoe, I think
Backhoe.
they got the backhoe.
Through the chair, we did receive the backhoe. That was the one that was positioned.
Oh, okay, good.
Behind the MC, Selectman Ted Zone at the.
Dedication.
Thank you very much.
You got it.
This one, I believe, was one that we had up last year, and we put it off a year. So that's one of the two. The second one is a replacement of a 10-year-old F-350 dump truck with 110,000 miles. That one is also coincidentally received $27,000 worth of repairs. And that's the truck that's used on a daily basis by the foreman, who manages all the DPW field operations. It's also integral to the snow removal operations. And it's also equipped with a 100-gallon diesel fuel tank, and it fuels our loaders, backhoes, and sweepers and sidewalks that are being used out in the field.
Is that S3?
That is correct.
Yep.
Through the chair, to answer the previous question, the other S31, we are looking to replace that with a vehicle that has a stainless steel body that can be put on future chassis. This one that we're talking about right now, S3, does not have that. It doesn't have a dump body, but it will be sprayed with a Rhino type liner for its bed.
To the chair? So, Mr. Westling, S31 is being replaced?
Correct.
And that's, you said it had 95,000 miles on it?
Correct.
And what was the net on that? Or what was the cost on that?
That one is $82,000.
And is that net, like I asked the chief, is that net the trade?
So we do have a trade estimate of $2,700.
So through Mr. Kamalu, or through the chair for Mr. Kamalu, as I said to the chief about the ladder truck, do we think that that truck, that 550, we could repurpose for like the trails, or, you know, like that Mike Bolson needs a truck, according to Mike Bolson. I don't know, I haven't looked too deeply into it, because I don't get into the day-to-day stuff, but, like for the stuff that he does, if he was to pull a chipper, or bring in gravel for the trails, or maintenance, rather than ask a DPW, a truck and an operator, and a truck, a driver, an operator, blah, 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 if Mike Bolson can do that on the trails, can we repurpose that 550? I don't know if a 550 might even be too big for trail stuff, but, so, the amount of money that we get for a trade-in with this MHQ, or whoever we're trading these to, I don't think we get enough bang for our buck for it, and I don't think you can put a for sale sign out and sell it privately. I don't know if you can or not, but, I think that for $2,700, it would be, if we're gonna replace that truck, for $2,700, we should be able to find another use for that, rather than give away money on the trade. We should be able to repurpose it and find another use in a different department, whether it's Parks and Rec hauling volleyballs back and forth to wherever they need to go. It doesn't matter, but we should be able to because I think if you were to go on Craigslist and you were to buy a truck of comparable year, mileage, and accessories, I think it would be a heck of a lot more than $2,700.
Yeah, no, that point is well taken, is part of our procedures when we are disposing of town property. We have several vehicles that have been passed on down to facilities, and if this vehicle does qualify, we would look into that. In terms of the trail management process, we are always looking for opportunities to find appropriate vehicles to help in that regard. as we know, the board recently put together a charge for the Trails Committee, and that's going to be one of the things that we'll be looking into.
Right, thanks.
Who determines,
Makes sense.
when you just said that we'll look into it, who determines?
We now have a very strong team. We have the department head who has the resource. We also have department heads who are looking for resources, and other town boards that are looking for resources, and now we have the chief procurement officer. That will be the team that will look into that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Catino, did you have a?
No, I'm good. Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna talk about also, because, you know, getting $2,700 back is just, it's not enough. My goodness gracious. I'll buy it for $2,700. I'll buy it for $3,000.
Yeah.
That's an ethics violation.
Yes, and in fact, through the chair, on that point, the message from the chief procurement officer is that he's going to be recommending that we put these vehicles that we want to trade out, if there are no needs in town to be met by those vehicles, that we put them out to bid.
Good. I'm happy.
Okay.
Happier. Through the chair?
Yes, Mr. Nasrallo,
This may
please.
be very naive, but are there any kind of leasing programs out there for these kind of vehicles?
Through the chair, that's something that we can certainly look at.
In fact, in one of the capital requests, we are looking into a lease option, and not specifically for DPW, but for another department. We are looking into a lease option.
Yeah, 'cause it just seems like, I mean, if we're replacing these every 10 years, reliability, we could have a new vehicle every 3 years, brand new vehicle, and maybe at a lower cost, I'm not sure. It's why leasing cars has gotten so popular.
Correct.
You know, you gotta turn them in, though. They charge you a fortune to be
If you go
scratched.
over the line.
Through the chair, if you have any other, I have several capital items, but if you have a specific order, I'm happy to go through in any order.
Are we ready to move on to the capital items?
I was already looking at them, so.
All right, then let's move to capital. We can always come back if someone thinks of a question they forgot to ask. 5-year sidewalk plan.
Through the chair, this is one that I am carrying the torch for the planning board and the master plan. This is the result of a survey that was done by the planning board. And what the recommendation was is $1.8 million worth of sidewalks, constructing sidewalks on Hayden Row, 3,800 feet from EMC Park to Chestnut Street on the easterly side. On West Main Street, 4,200 feet from Lumber Street to Downey Street. On Wood Street, 500 feet from Proctor Street to Walker Street. And then on Wild Road, 200 feet from house number 11 to Briar Cliff Drive.
I remember, I think this got deferred last year. It was up there and we didn't fund it.
Correct.
Personally, I can understand the Hayden Row piece, and I can understand the Lumber Street, Downey Street piece, because that whole neighborhood has no way of connecting with that whole West Main Street area. I know it's only a fraction of it, but, and again, I don't know what the rationale is behind this, what went on with the planning board sidewalk survey, but I have a hard time understanding the Proctor to Walker Street piece and the Wild to Briar Cliff right now. Those just don't seem to be, I guess I need some edification as to why those areas are high sidewalk needing areas, but.
Sure, you pick your Hayden Row, oh, sure.
Well,
Your
Hayden Row's a
neighborhood.
pretty darn
No, I'm
busy
kidding,
street,
I'm
but
cussing, sorry.
Proctor to Walker Street, there's nothing down there, and it's the same thing with Briar Cliff to Wild. It's into a little residential neighborhood that I'm wondering if that could be reduced a little bit. I frankly fail to see personally don't quite understand.
Through the chair, my understanding is that the one on Wood Street was to extend the sidewalks that we extended to the church, and then to link that in with the sidewalks that were built in front of the DPW. So there's a piece between the church and the DPW, and then extending it up to capture the new houses that were built on Wood Street and the neighborhood that would lead out of Saddle Hill and Proctor. So it was an extension of existing and connection of existing sidewalks. And then the one on Wild Road, there is a sidewalk network that leads all the way out to Chestnut, along Chestnut to Hayden Row. But there's a small portion of sidewalk there that's missing, and it's only 200 feet, so it's in front of two or three houses.
I know, it's just me.
Didn't we, so how much sidewalk did you say it was on Hayden Row from Chestnut to where? EMC Park?
From EMC Park to Chestnut Street.
Didn't we determine last year that we had a sidewalk just on the other side of the road?
Through the chair, that's correct. That's part of the rationale for why the sidewalks were put off. Last year was the second year, so this is the third year that it's come up for consideration. But yes, there is a continuous sidewalk that leads on the westerly side of Hayden Row along that same length. And then there is a new pedestrian crossing that will be constructed as part of that traffic signal installation at the intersection of Chestnut Street.
So I thought that we decided last year that this was just going to be off the table altogether. With the sidewalk, I mean, we have a sidewalk 14 feet away or 20 feet away, however long it is. So why would we put another 3,300 feet of sidewalk?
Yeah.
Mr. Khumalo?
If I may, yes, I think last year there was consideration that there was an existing sidewalk on the other side of the street. However, taking a step back, when this idea came up originally, there was consideration of the fact that we were constructing a school in that location, and that this sidewalk would also serve EMC Park. And given the traffic on Hayden Row, and the need to minimize, crossings from one side of the street to the other. Originally, the idea was it will be beneficial for the community to have the sidewalks on both streets, on both sides of the street.
You said initially it was decided on that.
Yes, that was the initial thought.
So we just did $1 million+ traffic calming study on Hayden Road, did we not?
Yeah, we did, and as part of that plan, we had contemplated having the sidewalks on both sides of the street. However, when we got to town meeting, the discussions eliminated the one on the other side of the street.
So, yeah, to me, the Hayden Row, I mean, we put it off last year because we had a sidewalk on the other side of the road. We still have a sidewalk on the other side of the road. So I'm not a fan of the Hayden Row, Chestnut Street. I think that if we had a whole lot more surplus laying around, a lot of extra money laying around that we had to spend, I wouldn't be opposed to it. But we have crosswalks. We've done the crosswalk, we've done the traffic calming study, we've done our due diligence on that. I think the want versus need, I think that's in my eyes, that's the first thing that I would cut out would be the 3,300 square feet of, running feet of sidewalk from Chestnut to Hayden Row. And I also feel the same with Claire, where that Wild Road, there's not a whole lot of traffic in there, so I think, and I'm not trying to just get the axe out and start cutting, but when I look globally at all departments, which we have been, I'm sure we'll make our suggestions to cut certain things, and I just think that, where we do have one running right across the street, I don't see the immediate need for the sidewalk on the easterly side of Hayden Row.
I would just, support what Mr. Titstone is saying, that I'm not opposed to sidewalk at all. I think there's a real need for sidewalk in this town. But I'm wondering if maybe we should have a second look at some of the recommendations given other needs in town. For instance, I've gotten, a lot of requests from people about extending the sidewalk that got started on Ash Street, because how busy and dangerous and narrow Ash Street is, and the number of residences there, and I've always responded, well, there's a sidewalk plan, and we're working at it bit by bit. Not that any of these aren't good ideas, but, maybe we should sort of reprioritize, because, to Mr. Tedstone's point, if there is a sidewalk on one side, yeah, you could do sidewalk down to Bradcliffe, but is this the highest traffic area? I still don't, get the Proctor Street thing, that, what's the burning need to connect to the church and the DPW when you're looking at something like Ash Street, which is a very dangerous, narrow road. So, I don't know, I'm in support of the sidewalk. I would just like to have a re-evaluation about where we can get the most bang for the buck and where it might be most needed. And I don't agree with the selected locations at this point in time. Maybe when the study was initially done, that seemed like the right idea. I think we should reevaluate the spots. Mr. Kamala, you've got a burning comment there, I can see.
Yeah, no, I think I hear the board's members' position on this topic. Perhaps I think the take should be, at least for me, John, to look at whether the sidewalk on Hayden Row Street was on Hayden Row. Jerry will not be happy if I say street. Hayden Row was part of the traffic calming proposal. It wasn't.
It was not.
Okay.
Well, to that, one of the ones that's most important to me is the safety of going under 495. Right now, we have I see people, as I've come from the west side of the town all the time, and I see people walking along there, and I'm saying, my God, when they have to go underneath that bridge.
Well, that's the Lumber Street one. That's in there.
No, that's what I'm saying. But, so if we're starting to talk, heading towards the west side of town, there are no sidewalks anywhere, no sidewalks on West Elm, no West Main Street. There's no way to walk or ride, or any kids to ride a bike anywhere past Lumber Street. That's, to me, that's vital for people to be able to go underneath the 495 underpass.
So it's the same idea, to kind of maybe readjust our priorities. The Lumber Street, Downing Street connection is in this, but I just think there might be other parts of town.
Through the chair, again, this was something that's brought forward, a request of the master plan and the planning board. So I think that it would be appropriate to bring it back through the planning board to have them reconsider and perhaps run another survey.
Okay, moving on.
Moving on, do you have the next one that you want to?
The next one here
about?
is sidewalk bucket truck.
Sidewalk tractor. So we are requesting for the third year, $177,000 for a new multi-purpose municipal tractor with a plow, blower, and sander. The DPW removes snow and ice from a network of 17 miles of sidewalk. 3 miles of sidewalk were added in the last 2 years on Ash, Rafferty, West Main, and Elm Street. And we expect to add, if that sidewalk plan is approved, even if it's not, we have new sidewalks in Legacy Farms, which will undoubtedly be asked for by the residents to be plowed. The DPW can't remove the snow and ice from all these sidewalks in a timely manner with only 2 machines. It's also a tremendous strain on the staff after they have been plowing for 16, 20, 24 hours to get into a machine, one of 2 machines, and do the streets, adding an additional 8 hours to their shift. So we're looking for a third machine so that we can clear another group of sidewalks that's forthcoming, and also to be able to clear the snow and ice from the sidewalks in a more timely and efficient manner.
So, I think we all know that I'm definitely the cheap one on the board. There's no doubt in my mind that we need this. We do. I can't, as much as I'd like to cut everything in the world and keep our taxes low, we need this. We need this to get the schools open on time. We need this to take care of the additional sidewalk, and we need it so instead of 2 guys running these sidewalk plows for 10 hours after the storm, we can have 3 and they only run for 6. So, in my opinion, this is a no-brainer.
Thank you.
I'm with you. Other questions on the sidewalk machine? Happy? Okay, how about the bucket truck?
The bucket truck. You look like you wanted to say something? Am I reading your body language?
No, yes, in fact,
Mr. Kamala, please.
I had a conversation with the procurements and grants manager late this afternoon, and I wanted to make sure that you had connected with Ben. Ben may have an update for us on the bucket truck.
Oh, in the bucket truck.
Come on up, Ben, grab a seat. As long as you got good news, you can speak forever.
At the last count, I thought we were looking to buy a used one or something. All of a sudden, we're dropping 190 grand.
So, through the chair, the initial placeholder was for $190,000 for a new, fully equipped bucket truck. But we have learned that, and we knew, but we have learned that there's a market out there for used bucket trucks, which will bring it down to somewhere in the $100,000 range. I think what my colleague here will I'll just let him share.
Sure. So, if I may, through
Give
the
us the
chair.
good news. It's not 190.
So the 190,000 is based on a truck that can go 70 feet in the air. To get a used one, they fly off the market awfully quick. There's a very small used market. It's kind of like the market for a Honda Civic versus a ladder truck. They're just a lot fewer. If we bring that down 50 or 60, that opens it up to a lot more inventory, obviously a lot of better conditioned vehicles that are going to be on the market for longer. So working with John to get to the appropriate height, we can definitely bring that number down substantially to get to the right vehicle.
Okay. You're looking like, what, about half, you said? Maybe 100 instead of 190?
Yeah. So, in summary, we're looking at the option of, instead of looking for a ladder truck that will go to 90 feet, we'll look for something that is lower than that. And then perhaps if we have any need for the 90-feet bucket truck, we look to the private contractors to do that. So that's one other way I think that Ben is exploring to lower the cost.
So what kind of height capacity are we talking about with the lesser vehicle? Instead of 70 or 90, we're looking at how high will they go? Still pretty good?
Sort of for the, I mean, 50 at a minimum. Again, we could bring that price down, certainly close to 100,000, maybe a little bit lower. It would depend on the market at the time that we're looking for it, for a used vehicle.
So, are we allowed to, just like we talked about those other trucks that we trade in for nothing, can we talk to these other towns that may be getting rid of one of those, and buy it from them before they trade it in for $2,500 instead of spending $100,000?
In fact, yes, we can do that.
Good. Moving on.
Exactly. The one entity that I think we should look to is Eversource.
I agree.
Yeah, I think Eversource.
I will not be the one negotiating that.
I will not be. Yeah.
If I may, too, another option is the federal surplus property.
Yep.
Where very good equipment comes off, so we're monitoring that as well.
Okay. All right, so assuming we like the concept, but we don't like 190 grand, we'll see what you can do with that.
Can we get a pump on it too, so the chief, another multi-purpose?
All right, any more questions on the bucket? We good? Okay, do we need to talk about the sewer and water items here? Mr. Westerling, Comprehensive Sewer Management Plan?
Sure thing. Through the chair.
Yep, please.
Through the chair, this is, again, I think this is the 30th that we brought this forward. This is an update of the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. It's $170,000. As we stated earlier, the Sewer Enterprise Fund needs some life support in its business plan.
It does.
And we believe that reevaluating the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan, which at this point is 15 years old, that we'd be able to look at, what it looks at is where we have the availability to provide sewer, what we have for sewer capacity, and what areas we would like to extend sewer. And right now, it's a plan that was done again in 2004. The town has changed dramatically in that time. There are new areas that are looking to be developed, and updating this will give us a revised plan. We would meet with the planning board, we would meet with the Board of Selectmen, with the town manager, with the DPW, and all the other constituencies to see where sewers are needed and wanted and where we can provide sewers. So this is a plan that will help us to boost the business side of the Sewer Enterprise Fund.
It's a borrowing.
New customers.
Correct.
Okay. All set on that, everybody? Okay, and there are two water articles, valve maintenance and replace DPW water department truck.
Thank you. Through the chair, we are looking at a $65,000 valve maintenance trailer system. And what that is, it's essentially a trailer-mounted valve turning machine. It's a hydraulic machine, and it would be used for two things. Right now, closing water gate valves during water main break emergencies is becoming more difficult due to their age. The oldest water gates that we have in the roadway are 130 years old, and it can take up to 3 hours to shut down water mains during an emergency. So if we have a break and we have a main that has to be shut down, two gates that are 130 years old, it takes several men on each side of the bar to turn that and shut that down. And what that means is that that's longer for customers to be without water supply. It means that we're wasting water that's running down the street. It means that we are scouring private property and town property and creating large trenches. Witness the one on Wood Street, just down from the DPW, which instead of just being a small trench, it ended up being a trench that was about 15 feet wide, and it extended across the entire length of the road because we had such a hard time shutting down that main. So this will help us to, we can use it during emergencies to carefully close those gates and to carefully open them at the end. And then it's also for ongoing maintenance of exercising those water gates. We can get out in the system, we can use the new full-time employee, put him on that thing and go out and actually exercise the gates so that they are all better operable during emergencies and times of need.
Truck.
The final item is replacement of W7. It's a 15-year-old F-350 pickup truck that has 150,000 miles on it. It's used on a daily basis by the Water Division, and it's integral to our operations. It's also, the new vehicle will be equipped with a plow so that it can plow primarily the water and sewer enterprise pump stations and well areas, but also in times of need, help with parking lots and on the streets.
Okay. And both of those are pay-as-you-go. The Water Enterprise Fund has the money.
Correct.
Sewer Enterprise is a borrowing because it doesn't have the money. Okay, any questions on these capital items under water? Anyone? Okay, we're good? We're all set?
15 years old, I think it's.
Yes, I think it doesn't owe us much, no. Not gonna get much of a trade-in on that one.
Thank you very much for your
50 cents.
time.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Okay, we're running real late here, so, okay, thank you. Engineering, Mr. Del Torrio?
Hello?
Hello.
Right.
Okay, we got,
Budget first?
please.
Any questions off right, or shall I give a quick summary?
Quick
Quick
summary.
summary.
Quick summary.
Just tell us when the corridor project's done, we're all set.
Facilities budget's increasing this year just from salary increases. In mainly, the bulk of the increases is for utilities for the two new buildings, DPW and library. That's probably close to 90% of the increase for the budget this year. The initial models for the buildings by the architects through the design engineers is what we base the estimates on for these buildings for natural gas and for electricity. Both of those were coming up short, simply put. Initially, it could be hours. Library, I think the models might have been based on fewer hours than the library is actually open currently. It's open a few late nights, 3 nights a week, and I'm not sure the model included a Saturday. So basically, that summarizes the increases for them. We are looking into some energy savings, but we really only have four or five utility bills, utility cycles that we have kind of post-construction. So again, we're kind of projecting some of this. I think we'll be able to, we do have an existing power purchase agreement. There's a process
it's called a schedule, there's a schedule that gets attached to those. I'm doing some rearranging this month to, move some of these larger buildings onto that schedule. Because DPW before and the library before weren't huge utility users, so they weren't on this schedule. But we're gonna be removing a couple of the smaller and putting these two, so I do think we'll have some energy savings, electricity savings. Solar panels that are on the DPW, already saving, we don't have the total amount. I won't talk about solar, but, that is providing some savings to the DPW, otherwise we would have a larger request for the DPW facility.
Through the chair, Dave, do you pay utilities for school department?
I do.
Just want the
For
public to
water
know
and
that.
sewer, for water and sewer, we pay those utilities. And I haven't asked for an increase for the marathon school. I think I could probably absorb that through some of the savings through, we did an energy project for town buildings where we replaced all the LED lights through a grant, and it was fully paid for. So all the town buildings, it retrofitted the existing lights with LED lights now, so that's why I'm not, I think those savings will be realized, but they'll be taken up, it's estimated about $12,000, $15,000 might be the water and sewer bill for the new school, based on the first bills that we've been getting in for the water.
But you don't do the utilities, the electric utilities for the schools?
I do not do the electric or the gas for the schools.
Seems the lights are on for all the high school late at night. I wonder what's going on. Whole building's lit up at 11 o'clock at night, but anyway. Okay. Questions? Comments?
Mr. Del Torre, I'd like to talk to you offline sometime about center school gym. My problems that I have with it. I won't do it here because we all have a Friday night to live, but
This is too.
Sure, I would love to have some conversations offline about center school.
Okay. Okay, are we ready to move on to capital then? Everybody? Okay, capital facilities. First item is town hall elevator controls.
Yeah, the elevator controls, elevator was put in with the original addition to town hall, and addition, the renovation for town hall was in the
Ancient.
the 80s, I believe,
Yeah.
so it's beyond the expected life. When we did recently, we had the town hall, we had the electricity failure from the pole, where the primaries coming from the pole actually shorted out in the conduits that they come into the building in. So when those were replaced, we're starting to have issues with the elevator now that we have kind of an updated electrical system. So it's well overdue. I have $75,000 in there. That was based on, we went to do this, we had a capital request maybe 4 or 5 years ago to do this. But we've been pushing it off and pushing it off. The new estimates are about, I got a new proposal I submitted to Ben last week. I finally received it from a elevator vendor, and it was in the mid-90 range. So ultimately, if this request doesn't increase, final numbers, it'll be a little short. So I'm not sure the town manager of how he never likes increasing. I get evil eye. We're looking for other sources to kind of help fund that shortfall, should it just move.
Well, I know I did read that it said it was expected 20-year lifespan, and this is 33 years old, so it looks like it's on its last legs.
Yes. We have some sort of power issue in the building when the elevator gets called, so it's really needed, so.
If we can just move back up, this was listed under police, but I know when we came to that, they said, we ought to discuss it under facilities. This was the police jail cell floor for $45,970.
Yes.
And I also noticed when I read the materials that under the quote from this Associate Concrete Coating, they said, much of the existing floor is well bonded. In lieu of complete removal and replacement, they could put together a proposal to patch and recoat the area that could be provided. So maybe you can speak to that, and also the concept of maybe just doing a patch instead of a full reconstruction. According to the quote, looks like they could give us some numbers on just addressing the failing areas, perhaps. So anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself, but maybe you can speak to that.
Yeah, from a facility standpoint, the existing floor system, it's an epoxy type adhesive that gets applied to the base concrete floor. It really becomes kind of a shell, kind of like a candy coating over an ice cream. It starts breaking. That's just an indication that it's failing. There was some movement in the building after it was constructed. There's some cracks in the flooring. Nothing out of the ordinary, just settlement cracks. When that happens with that type of system, there's not a whole lot of flexibility in these epoxy type systems. So I just foresee, more and more failure just occurring. The second part of that is trying to patch something, especially the flooring type system. It's gonna be really hard to match the existing system. From not just from an aesthetic standpoint, but having an existing system bond to the new system, I think it's going to be a difficult kind of approach. Typically, if you don't have the exact, it's like trying to mix paint 5 years later to match the old. The colors will be off for sure. Again, aesthetically, that would just be not good, but again, I think it's going to be real hard to try to patch this and make it properly adhere to the old system.
This may just be splitting hairs. I don't really care about the aesthetics in a jail cell, quite frankly. It's not pretty, that's not my problem. I was just interested in the fact that the provider specifically said, I can put together a quote to just if it's something structural where the whole system is failing and you're just going to be patching one thing after another, and maybe that may be the case, but I just was interested in the fact that the actual quote mentioned that they could perhaps do a recoating and stabilize it. I'd be interested to know.
I know part of that is probably based on when we initially talked to these folks and met them on site. We were talking $20,000 range for this project, and when they came back with their proposals, they were in the $45,000 range, so it was a double. So some of that, I think, might have been some backtracking. They still want to do some work for the town and make some money. Yeah, you can patch it and see what happens. Right now, it would meet the police's need to meet their inspection. I'm not sure what department it is. It's Department of Health.
Actually falls under the DOC, but we feel that's not.
Step into my office.
We've actually failed the inspection just on that floor area 2 years in a row, and we've also had to close down 2 of our cell blocks for the last year. Reason being, it's not like normal chips of paint. It's big hard pieces of rubber that could be formed. Just breaking off a piece could be used as a shank or a weapon against a police officer, so it's an officer's safety danger. And the last thing we want is get to the point where they totally shut our whole cell block down, and then we'll have to deal with the issue of transporting prisoners to other stations and things of that nature.
No, I wasn't questioning at all the need, and it was justified in your application. I was questioning whether we need to do the full Monty or not, based on what was listed.
So, yeah, I feel the same way. If having about 6 or 7 years experience working in this environment, we don't need it to be, our clink to be love it or list it quality. I don't care what it looks like. But in working in that environment, it's amazing what these guys can turn into weapons. So if the structural integrity, if a piece of concrete can come come up, and they can pull it up and use it as a weapon against someone that shouldn't be used against.
Or
We
to
need,
harm themselves as well.
yeah, well, then we absolutely, I think that this is something that should go on the front burner. If it's, the carpet doesn't match the drapes, well, don't commit a crime and you won't have to spend any time in our prison. Sorry if it's unsettling for you and you don't feel comfortable there. If it's structurally, the epoxy comes up, I mean, the guys are crafty when it comes to stuff like that. I've seen stab wounds from a toothbrush. They're very creative. But if it's aesthetics, I'm all for making it the least aesthetically pleasing possible to make these people not want to go there. If it's structural, then we absolutely have to take care of it. The safety of our officers are paramount.
Other questions on the part of the board? Okay. All right, under capital, these two items that were listed are also listed as a no action, town hall parking lot and center school renovations, so...
Yeah, if I may explain, town hall parking lot is still under discussion, negotiation, and then the center school renovation, we're awaiting a report back from the permanent building committee.
Okay. If I could just ask you, Mr. Kamalo, on that center school renovation, I read the CPC proposal, and it also included a line about assessing the evaluating town hall for continued use. My understanding was that town hall was one of the many user groups that was considering space availability at center school, but I wasn't aware that part of this was going to be evaluating town hall for continued use. This seems to be right into the concern Mr. Terry had, which I didn't buy into, but it's making me want to join Team Terry when I read that.
Yeah, perhaps for clarity, our focus is on the basement.
Oh, okay. That's a different item here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so again, also under no action, there was the town hall basement renovation. So are we, this is off the, which was $200,000 for facilities, so we're not going to discuss that?
For now, the town manager is not recommending it.
Okay. All right,
There you go.
then that does it. We're all set for facilities?
Good by me.
Dave, have you been asked to prepare the next update for the Board of Selectmen on the downtown corridor project yet?
So I just,
Dave, quiet please.
no, I wanted to just put it,
Have you been asked to prepare an update on the downtown corridor project?
yeah, you can answer that, he knows.
Mr. Kamala has something he's got to say over there.
Yeah.
Yes, I have.
Yes, when are we gonna see that?
I recommended to the town manager to do it one of the first meetings in March. I think there's a 5th
First
and a
meetings
12th.
in March? Okay, thank
I
you.
think there's a 5th and a 12th.
Thank you for answering my question, Dave.
Mr. Kamala, do you have something you'd like to add?
Yes, correction, town hall basement renovation, the town manager does recommend it, sorry.
But the
Does recommend it.
capital improvement does
Yes.
not.
Yeah.
The capital, so do we want to ask Mr. Del Toro to just speak to that very quickly, since it is recommended by the town manager? This is the basement.
Yeah, the basement project, maybe a few years ago, they're all blending in now, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we had hired an architect to develop a few different options for reusing, repurposing the basement area. One of the options that we selected is kind of create a centralized hallway and have the town use on the right for either office space, meeting space, storage space. And on the other side, we had another kind of combined meeting room with a kitchen area. The building no longer has just one area for staff, for a kitchen area or for anything else. The spaces on the second floor that was a kitchen has been used, turned into an office space. As well as meeting space, it was used as a meeting space. So it's kind of to create meeting space, office space, and a kitchen area. And that's kind of the layout. And it's to maintain the accessibility route for town halls, obviously, from the ramp through that area. In order to do that, there's a renovation needed for all the building systems, providing heating and cooling to both sides as well as to the centralized hallway, lighting, sprinkler systems, IT. And it's all, I think about $500 a square foot was about the estimate. I think the original report recommended using, or it was a little less than that, but based on the town hall project and how much that cost to do IT and some of the HVAC work, just becomes very costly.
Because it's getting a little bit of use now, but it's really underutilized.
Yeah, right now it's used as a makeshift office space when there's somewhere you need a large group of people to meet. But the heating in there is insufficient for the use.
So the $200,000 listed here, is that just for study, or would that be to actually
No,
start
that
any
would be
work?
to, to renovate the entire area.
There's some work.
It's new walls, it's, once you put up walls, you interrupt the sprinkler coverage, you interrupt the lighting system, you interrupt the fire alarm system.
Right.
Yeah, the cooling system, so it's all of those systems. It's not simply putting up a couple partitions and that's it.
Right, but the money requested is not for a study. The money
No, no.
requested is actually to get some construction.
Correct, correct.
Getting something done.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we good? You ready? All right, it's 10 after 5.
Thanks.
Are you all set, Mr. Kamara?
We're good.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Del Torrio. And
Yeah, no, yes, I'm thinking in terms of Dave. We have IT.
IT, right. So you want Dave to stick around for IT?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Okay.
Okay, Josh?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Move to the
So
co-pilot
this is
seat.
so late. Okay. Mr. Brissette, thanks for waiting.
Well, follow suit and start with operating.
Please.
Move to capital. So the IT expense budget is asking for an increase of $43,000 over fiscal 19. Roughly the breakdown of that is that 23,000 can be attributed to 3 new multi-function copier scanner printer machines that we'd be purchasing outright as opposed to leasing, as we've sometimes done in the past. The remainder of the increase is attributed to $25,000 in new or enhanced services, namely a newer upgraded version of an online records and scanning tool. This was a software as a service model that we received funding from CPC for the first year, specific to the cemetery online records project. Some of the other notable increases or new services would be maintenance and support for the recent security upgrades at police and fire. This is for the badging systems and the camera systems. The first year of maintenance and support was included with the capital purchase, and so at this point we're running off of that first year capital purchase and into ongoing maintenance and support, as well as an increase in our social media records retention tool to ensure that we're compliant with all town social media records being archived. The difference that you see between the 23,000 and 25,000 that I talked about there, being a total of $48,000 increase, we're realizing approximately $5,000 in savings in other areas through contract negotiations, smart purchasing.
Questions? Okay, then let's just move right on to capital. The security cameras, I know when Amy Beck was here last time, we asked her a little bit about this. I think we have a little background on it, but give us a rundown. I think you're reducing the number of cameras a little bit from the initial request.
Correct. So there was originally a single submission bundled article for a total of $70,965, which was made up of three parts, roughly $33,000 for a senior center camera system, approximately $32,000 for library camera system, and then approximately $12,000 for a couple of enhancements and a camera upgrade, potentially 1 to 2 camera relocations of existing cameras at the police station. Based on feedback from CIC, we went back and decreased the ask for the senior center cameras, essentially eliminating a number of cameras from the original proposal, working with the police department and Amy in terms of level of comfort with kind of a more minimal approach in terms of the cameras for the senior center. So after doing that, we broke out the senior center camera security system separate from the original price of around $33,000 down to a new ask of $23,195. So although that's below the $25,000 limit for CIC, we wanted to be clear and transparent about the price, and that's why we're still leaving that on as a capital request. And then from that, we bundled, we continued to bundle the two other, the library and the police. So the prices there did not change, but those are together as a separate submission for $43,830.
Questions from the board on those items? No. Okay, end user hardware replacement for $43,750.
End user hardware replacement, this is a yearly recurring capital expense. Just getting ahead of and staying on top of normal expected refresh cycles for laptops and desktops for employees. So rather than being in a situation where, we say we're gonna go every 4 years and then try to replace all the computers in town at once, that gets expensive for that every 4 years, and it's also from a manpower standpoint, we don't have the staff to try to support all computers in town in one fell swoop. So we try to normalize that distribution over an average lifespan of a laptop being 3.5 years and a desktop being 5 years.
Okay. And under borrowing, capital borrowing, public safety software upgrade for $375,000?
So if I may?
Yes, Mr. Kamalo, please.
Through the chair, I think for the public's information, the data center replacement project, 205, that's a joint town school.
The what?
West.
Where's that?
The
number
14, data center replacement.
Oh, it's listed under school, but
Yes.
okay, is an IT thing.
For clarity, I think it's...
Correct.
Yeah.
For clarity, that is a joint article between town and school to replace the existing shared data center between town and school.
And public safety?
Yeah, public safety, this is to replace our public safety records management and computer-aided dispatch system. We found out that the existing system that we have today is the vendor is going to stop offering support, development, and enhancements for that system. The town went through an exercise, I believe it was approximately 5 or 6 years ago, proactively to look at options to upgrade or replace the existing system. Made the determination at that time that the situation that we were in, the price didn't justify the spend, it wasn't worth it at that point. So we're looking to revisit that at this point, to make sure that we have a computer-aided dispatch and record system that is actively managed and supported by the vendor.
But if the provider's going away, we have no choice. We have to do this.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, to be clear, it is not an outsourced software as a service model. So the vendor support, development, enhancements goes away. The existing system, barring any problems, could continue to work. Right, but I think as Mr. Tedstone said earlier, if the chief's car stops working, you can't go around the corner overnight and lease a new one. I think it's the same kind of thing here. If we have a catastrophic issue with the
Especially since
records,
Radio Shack closed.
This isn't something I can fix with a little, welding machine or.
So we're living on the edge.
Bob Slammin could fix it.
On the edge.
Bob Slammin could fix it.
So I just wanted to be clear about that point, that yes, it's not as if on day one the system would cease to function, but the concern certainly is that were we to have any issue, there's
We'd be in big trouble.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, does the board have any questions on these items? Okay, your co-pilot over there, Mr. Del Torrio, he's happy, nothing to add. He's happy. All right, seeing as it's 20 after 5.
Motion to adjourn.
Good shape.
So can I have a
Thank
quick
you. Oh,
question
oh,
before we
Mr.
adjourn?
Hur?
So Mr. Kamalo, on the revenue side of the overall budget, with your colleagues still here this afternoon, we're looking at a 2.5%, Prop 2.5 increase, correct?
Yes.
What was the excess levy increase or number that we're going to use percentage-wise?
Percentage-wise,
Was it 2.3?
I'll tell you in 1 second.
And also new growth if you're looking in there at the same time. What are those three numbers?
Thank you. Okay. Unused levy, we were using 445, if I'm reading this correctly, and that's 0.09%.
So we're using 0.9% for the excess levy, correct?
Yes,
Okay. 2.5 and a Prop 2.5.
yes.
And then what was new growth?
New growth is 3.1.
3.1.
Yep.
Are those numbers different than what we got a couple weeks ago? I'm okay if they are. I'm just, were they something different than that a couple weeks ago?
No, I believe these numbers have not changed.
So adding that up, it's 2.5, 3.4, 6.5%, correct? With those three percentages anyway.
Yes, 6.5, yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so we're all set with IT. Everybody's happy? All right. Thank you, Mr. Grissetti. You all set, Mr. Kamala?
I'm all set.
Okay, liaison reports, sounds like Mr. Kamala has, Mr. Catino has something he'd like to add about liaisons. Mr. Catino?
Yes.
Yes.
No. Yeah, I went to a couple of chamber events, or chamber meetings, and the chamber, as well as the new and improved Economic Development Council, would like to come sit with us in one of the meetings in March. They want to talk about South Street and attracting new development there, speed to market for the new projects, zoning and infrastructure that attracts rather than deters new companies, and they want to bring some ideas and paths to correcting our commercial and residential tax imbalance, to try and bring up some, to bring more companies to Hopkinton. And so they'd like to know if they could come meet with us in either the 5th or the 23rd or 25th.
See what the agenda looks like.
Okay,
Okay.
Thank you.
we have picked agenda. Yeah.
Any other reports? Then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And opposed, that is unanimous. Thank you, everybody, for hanging in till 5:30 on
Thank you very much, everyone.
on a Friday night.